Hi, welcome back to the channel. David Taylor or Mr Pelargonium here. Today we're going to have a good look round my greenhouse. I haven't done a look round video for a little while, so I think it's time we had a look round. It's spring, well, early spring anyway. The weather's been pretty crummy to be quite honest, but let's have a look. Let's see how it goes. Hi, well, welcome along again. I've been very busy since I did the last video. So let's have a look around the greenhouse and see what I've been up to in the last few weeks. Now, you may remember I had a large batch of plants down in this corner, which I overwintered. Now, one of the first big pots that I looked at was one that you may remember was sighted here. It had a Mrs. Burdett Coots, excuse me, need to do a cough, a Sophie Dumaresque and a Cleveland Joy gold leaf, which we'll see in a moment. That's just over the back there. And they were all in a large 12-inch pot. They actually did quite well last summer. Now, I did decide, because there were a number of sort of dead stems, particularly on two of the plants, that I made the decision to split the pot up. Now, the pot in itself is really quite clean. Inside there was no sign of mealybug and that sort of thing. But I decided that the Burdett Coots, the lovely cream tricolour here, was in perfect condition. So I've separated that into its own separate pot. Now the Sophie Dumaresque, excuse the pronunciation if it may be a bit different, that had a lot of dead and dying stems, and I've got this lovely good straight stem from it, and I'm going to make a standard of that. So we'll talk about that a little later in another video. And here's the Cleveland Joy is sighted over here. Similar thing. This has got a long dead and dying stem on it there, but it's got a cutting that I'm going to split off there. And that's got a really strong growth up through the middle, so I'm going to make a standard of that. But again, I'll talk about that in my standards video. Got a prim there, large prim, that stayed in that pot. Knocked them out. I've depotted a bit just to have a look. No disease in any of the roots. Now we've got a Vivienne here, which has grown very well. I really like this plant. Lovely gold leaf Stella. That's stayed in it. That's in about an 8-inch pot, I think, 8-inch clay pot. Doing very well. That's growing on very nicely. And I had a basic zonal Hermione here, just coming into flower a bit. I've actually potted that on. That was in an 8-inch clay pot. Potted that into a bigger, that's in a 10-inch clay pot now. But that was wanting to grow away, so that was fine. That's done. That's growing on. Mini Czech, love this plant. It's got sort of almost a dwarf zonal leaf, but with cactus flowered type bloom to it. That's growing on, always slow to get away. The dark leaf varieties are always a bit slower to get away in the spring, but that's fine. I'll leave that in there. Took the pot off just to check the roots. No problem with mealybug. And my variegated version of Mr Wren, I've got two of them. We have a look on the other side. This one, this trained one, you may remember I'm trying to train it up. I've actually repotted that. Again, it was quite clean in the root, but the root ball was very tight. Been in there over a year, so I decided to just, get the root out, break some of the root off, give it a clean, and repot it. And it was relatively straightforward to do, even with its little trellis that I've got it growing up there. It's almost reaching the top, one or two of those stems. So I'll let that go, but it will take a month or so to just re-establish itself in that pot to really grow away again. But I'm more than happy with it. This other one, this is a real sort of big brute. It's actually two plants. It's in a big 10-inch pot at the moment. I just took the pot off again. The roots are clean. I've just watered it actually, but I will probably, this is at the top of the sort of supporting sticks that's on. I may get a number of cuttings off it to level it off a bit, and that'll grow as a lovely bush plant, I think. Moving on to the top shelf here. These are all sort of mini standards. I'll talk about those a little later in another video. And then we're on to lots and lots of dwarf young plants that have been all potted up into 4.5, 4-inch or 4.5-inch, 1 or 2 5s as well if I want to grow them more as stock plants. But they've all been potted on. Now, common problem at this time of year, I've spoken about it in the spring many times, is that you often get this reddening of the leaves. All that is temperature variation. That's what causes that. In the spring, we're starting now to get some slightly warmer days, but the nights are still relatively chilly. And also when you give them water, if the water's a little bit chilly as well, it'll all contribute towards getting this reddening of the leaves. Now, there's not many on there, there's just one in this particular case, which in this case I will just snap off. But that's the sort of thing that you can get, particularly affects stellas. Stellas, which generally like it a bit drier anyway, do suffer a bit more from that. And while we're talking of that, we might as well go down and look at this large Robin Louise of mine, which has started growing away. But this is typical of what happens to some of the green leaf stellas. They really do suffer badly from this reddening of the leaves. Now, what you can do, just take a number of them off, slowly but surely. I mean, in a huge plant like this is just one plant. You can just take them all off in a way in one go. That won't harm them because there's only probably about 10 on there. But just be careful. We've only got 1 or 2, like in the small plant that I had up here. You can just take 1 or 2 off at a time. It's not a problem. But gradually, as the temperatures balance off, as the spring progresses, you won't have too many problems at all. And gradually, the green leaves will overgrow and replace all of those red ones. So moving on through, I really particularly like this one, a lovely white single. I actually put a photograph of that on my Facebook page and my Instagram feed for Mr Pelargonium this morning. But there we are, a number of my new cuttings of seedlings potted on. There's a Willowbrook there. That's a nice white. It's a sort of another variety, Willowbrook. That's not one of mine. Again, young standards I'm still to do with. Shrivenham Rose, that's one of mine. That's been cut back. We'll talk about balancing in a moment. Now we've got potted on Regals about the place. Here's the Shrivenham Stars that have all been potted up into 4-inch or 4.5-inch pots. They will not progress in general, they won't progress to a bigger pot. They will certainly be repotted in the late summer, ready for show next year, hopefully. But I'm hopeful that these will grow on to produce quite a nice plant just for greenhouse use. That's why I'm letting them flower. I'm not too concerned. They're not going to be in any shows or anything this year. I'll mention the show in a moment. That's another story entirely. But yeah, they're all growing on. Also over this side, we've got the Regals. Now the Regals are really beginning to grow. This side of the glass house is what I call the darker side. The other side is the lighter side until about April, when the sun will actually start to hit this side as well. But because it's sheltered, I've got a huge garage there. It's built right in an alcove between 2 garages. That's our garage and next door's garage. But this is in a huge little bit of a block of garden. The greenhouse is sited, which you may have seen. I have posted pictures in the past of our location. But yeah, this side's not going to get too much sun. In the winter, it doesn't get any. But in the summer, the sun is just beginning to hit this side now as it rises further. But But so the Regals love it, basically. The Regals like this cooler side. But they're all beginning to grow away now, really batch out. I have done, and I'll insert a video now, of me taking off some of the larger leaves. Now, when you cut back plants, for instance, these Regals that are generally done for exhibition, they were stocked in late December. So what happens is you get a number of leaves that continue to grow, but then you get all the young breaks that are obviously going to be behind in terms of size growth of the large leaves. So all of the large leaves, eventually the older leaves have to come off in order to be able to balance the plant and make it look neat and tidy, basically. Otherwise you're going to have some large leaves, large old leaves. You'll have all the new shoots coming through, and then you'll sort of get a bit of an relatively unsightly plant. So what we do, we take all these larger, older leaves off to enable, when you get to a stage that the younger shoots are beginning to produce leaves themselves, and you can, and then be able to take over the whole growth effectively and make a nice, neat, balanced plant. And that's what we've got here. You can see now the large overgrown leaves have been taken off, and all the shoots now are making up the whole size of the plant, and they're all pretty neat. I'm relatively happy where they are. Job to know whether they're going to be able to hold to sort of the late June period. All of the Regals up the back here, liking it relatively cool. Do get a bit of sun in the afternoon, but they're growing on very well. Another standard here. This one's obviously chronically suffered from the reddening of the leaves, but you've got some lovely fresh new zoned growth coming through the top there. I won't remove those until the lovely green leaves at the top have sort of grown on a bit, but I am growing that as a standard in itself. Then we come over to the warmer part of the greenhouse. There's a lovely, another white double. That one's got a name. I'm recalling that Colin Martin. That's another one of the Shelving series. And again, another one here that I particularly like. This one. This was a Shelving Star Bold Cherub cross to produce, and it's got a lovely zoned leaf, this one, and quite a very dark, deep pink bloom, tight double. Particularly like that one. So that's for the future. There's the white double, looking pretty nice. And then we go over to what I generally call the warm side at the moment, because this gets sun on it now virtually all day long, this side. You can see the system. If we look at some of these exhibition plants over the back here, got exactly the same system. We strip off the larger leaves. So after stopping, you've still got the larger leaves that are in there. And then when all these young shoots really begin to burst through, you can begin to remove all of the large, older leaves. And that'll balance it off, and that'll all grow through, can't get my words out, all grow through very evenly. So that's what we've done. That's Annie Grace as a particularly good single basic zonal. We got overgrown dwarfs, floribunda types growing in that one. Now up on the top shelf here, you may remember that I had a number of stat burns, and they've all been potted up now into 6-inch pots, because I'm ideally wanting those to grow on as a floribunda as well. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how they grow. One or two others, I've just done that one this morning actually, so that'll grow through a bit. But I'm hopeful that they grow on to make a really quite decent plant this year. They were, I think, May last year cuttings, so they're 10 months old now. Constantly stopped, constantly nipping out the tips of them to make them bush down. And I'm hopeful that I can get quite a decent large scale floribunda type plant, because it is relatively small leaved, but in the floribunda class, you're basically growing, well, larger miniatures or dwarfs into a much bigger sort of exhibition type plant known as a floribunda. And I've never done them with something like Stadburn before. I've seen it done over the years in the past by top growers. So that's one that I'm particularly looking forward to. Number of standards at the back. Again, we'll talk about those in another video. Deanna Westwood. I'll talk about the standard version elsewhere, but this one's done very well. It's grown through the winter. I'm surprised with how well that's done through the winter, actually. It's stayed growing all of the time, kept it quite dry. But yeah, I'm very pleased with how they've done. I have got a few cuttings now just going. They are heel cuttings, so they've got a little smidge of root just in the base of them. So they're not sort of what I would call completely naked cuttings. So, you know, now it's late March, the greenhouse is gradually warming up a little bit. Getting a few younger plants in amongst these ones at the top, because this is the warm side. So these are all taken as heel cuttings, so I'm hopeful that they take on. Here's a good example of an exhibition plant where I've actually done the de-leafing a little while ago on that one, just to balance it off. But they're all growing, you know, quite strongly now, ready for the show. And we're back now to the other corner. Now, if we look down, you'll see I've actually got some boards. So I've made some sort of supplementary shelving here, really, just ready to be able to incorporate other plants and pots and things as they get bigger. I had some large plants in that area, which are now all tucked down in here, because down here on the floor, primarily because we're getting a lot of light now down in here, so they can all be sat down. I kept a few of them along there during the winter, but in the main, there's not enough light there. But at this time of year, when the sun's really bashing down on there, you know, it's fine now to move them all down into that area. Okay, so there we are. I hope you enjoyed that little look around the greenhouse, although I haven't done one for a little while. So it was good to catch up and be able to sort of show you what's going on, the stages that the plants are at. Now, one thing I do need to mention, though, is the annual show. Right, the original show day was the 19th of June, and that, unfortunately, is just prior to the UK government's roadmap to get us out of lockdown. Generally, from the 21st of June, which is the Monday after the Saturday we were meant to be holding the show, is the day when there's meant to be more or less a full unlocking of restrictions due to the coronavirus. So the show on the 19th has had to be cancelled. We are, though, looking to see if we can potentially move it back a week or two. Can't give really any more details of that because there's a lot of unknowns regarding halls. We would need to hold it in a hall. So we're really investigating that idea at the moment. Obviously, I think the thing is a lot of the halls don't know how they're going to be able to emerge out of sort of full unlocking, if you like. So you're just going to have to watch this space and see how it goes. But if there's once we get any further news on what we're hoping and planning to do, we'll let you know by all our usual methods on the website and the Pelargonium and Geranium Society social media. But in the meantime, that's just about it from me today. Hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you again very soon.